Okay guys, so we're going to start with just a little blurb about why the English came. So this is in your textbook, which is going to look similar to what I'm going to show you in my teacher book. Okay, so it's important that you still read this, but just go over the blurb that I'm kind of giving you in just a video, okay? So on page 20, it's talking about why the English came. Things in England were very uncomfortable, like you read in chapter 1, talking about the Protestant Reformation, the doctrine that was signed by Martin Luther, okay? And that was talking about how they all wanted freedom of speech of some kind when it came to, or not freedom of speech, sorry, nix that, freedom of religion. And the Protestant Reformation was saying we don't want necessarily to be Catholic because of all the rules and regulations. We want our own basic form of religion, okay? So this is why they came up with the concept of Protestantism, okay? So now that we are getting into the section known as the 13 colonies, so when you open your book, it looks like this, okay? But you don't have all the cool little blurb stuff. That's just for me. So why the English came. There are 5 main reasons. So in your guiding question, when it says, what are the 5 motivations that resulted in the English settlers coming to North America, all 5 of these are in that first section under section 1, okay? The first one where people wanted to be a fortune seeker. What this means is they wanted to come here to do work because there were certain resources in America. One of the biggest ones that we will learn about later is tobacco. The other big things they wanted to get the new resources they could find only here, that was rice, lumber, pine, tar, indigo, and another really big one is the fur industry. That's going to be huge in the very north part of America, mostly bordering Canada, because the French settlers are going to be really big into the fur industry. Okay. The second reason they wanted to is the opportunity to own land. Now, England was extremely packed. There was no free land that they could have anywhere. So they wanted to be able to have the abundance of free land, but we'll come back to that in regards to it was never free. They basically stole it from the Native Americans. So we'll get to that. The third one we have is political freedom. So they already wanted religious freedom. They wanted to be able to practice religion in their own safe space. But they also had something called the Magna Carta. Okay, this was signed by King John in 1215. Okay, now what this did is it was trying to limit the power of the English monarch. Okay, it wasn't exactly the most successful. So what happened is people went to America because they wanted to get things away from the monarch, so then they gave it to people who were kind of like mayors. What we see now is like a mayor or a leader in that sense. Well, these people became very, very corrupt. And so because of that, what originally was taken from the monarch and given to the other leaders backfired. And so now they're like, all right, peace out. I just want to go to another place and do it on my own. The fourth thing they wanted is the big one that we talked about, which was religious freedom. So they wanted freedom to structure their society towards Protestant Reformation. Okay, and we'll talk about this later. We're going to have all sorts of different names for that. The big thing is the Church of England, which is also known as the Anglican Church, Anglican. Okay, this was all for the Reformation. Okay, so the last thing that came, skip that, go back. So still wanting to have their religious freedom, there was the start of something called the Virginia Company. Okay, actually, come back to that. So let's go over real quick. Okay, the first reason they came was fortune seekers, things like furs, tobacco, tar, lumber, pine, stuff like that. Second was the opportunity to own land. This is the free land. In the free land, there was something that was made that was called the Virginia Company. This gave people the lure to come over to America with something called head rights. A head right is known as a land grant. The land grant therefore gave them, if you do this, we will grant you the land you want to be able to do whatever you want with it. The other thing they had was something called an indenture or indentured servants. What this meant was they had a work contract. It did not start as this big old to-do with everything is, turning into slavery. It actually was a contract where if people came into the idea to move to America, they said, listen, if you come over and you work this land that I own or this guy owns over there for 5 years, okay, you will then get your own land after your debt is paid. A lot of people came into this idea of moving to the New World because they had no money, they had nothing. Okay, so if you have nothing, how are you going to pay to get over there? So this is where indentured servants come in. The idea that you can then pay off, it's like putting something on a credit card and then paying it off later, only it's working it off. Physical labor, okay? So this paid for their passage, and it also gave them somewhere that they could stay when they got here. A lot of times people would come over here. There were many cases where there were teenagers that mom and dad weren't doing well or whatever, and so they would go over to America to try to make money to then send home. So if you've got a teenager, think of it this way. You're going over to America, you're 15, 16 years old. You're leaving mom and dad and brother, sister, everybody behind. Where are you going to stay? What are you going to do? It's a brand new country. You don't know anything. Well, this is where indentured actually sounds good. You work this off, you pay this in labor, and then you can then start sending money back home. It actually sounds like a really good idea. Okay, so that all comes under the concept of the free land. Okay, then we had the political freedom with the Magna Carta, religious freedom, getting away from the Catholic faith. The last thing that people did when they wanted to come over to America is they had the idea for an adventure. This was a very, very small percentage of people. Mainly the reason why this was so small is because people, in order to be an adventure seeker, needed to have money. You can't just come over here and you don't know anything, the lay of the land, anything, and just go longing for adventure, and you have no food, you have no supplies, you don't know anything. This is a really expensive idea. So there weren't a lot of people that did this, and the success rate was very, very, very low. So if you have a low chance of actually getting anywhere, you don't want to do it. Okay? So that's the top 5 reasons. That's all of chapter 2, that we're going to be talking about and how this is going to work. Okay? Make sure you have all those written down. You had some bold words in there. Make sure you ask me questions if you have any, and come back next time for the next one.